All right. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Doran. We jumped on this call and just accidentally noticed we're both wearing polos today, so it is unofficial Polo Wednesday, and you got the salt washed off of your car. Good job. How did that go?
It was the first day where the temperature's been above like 20 some odd degrees in probably about a month. So I guess everyone had the same exact idea, which is wait in line for literally 40 minutes at the car wash in order to get through.
Waiting at the car wash, yeah. On that note, let's fire up the spreadsheet. It is midweek, mid-majors extravaganza, and at this point, I mean, we still have the Big East in there, but at this point, there's not much worth talking about in the Big East. Seton Hall is the only team on the board here. You can see on the left the six teams in this tier who all have at least a 98% chance of dancing. They might all be 100%. I don't remember. But you see our seeds there. We still have UConn on the one line. Gonzaga's hanging out there in the 4 seed range. St. John's a 5. St. Louis a 6. And then Villanova and Utah State in there around 7, 8 seed range. But we're looking at the bubble teams for our, what did I say? We're calling this What Will It Take week. And we'll start out with Seton Hall and probably won't spend a whole lot of team time talking on them. But if you didn't catch our previous two episodes, this number up here above each team is what Torvik's Tourneycast says their chances are of an at-large bid. Now, I will point out right away on Miami, Ohio, 3.7%. It says there's like a 50% chance they get the at-large, or excuse me, the auto bid from the MAC. But specifically, if they need an at-large, this is what their chance is. And we'll certainly touch on Miami, Ohio in a bit. And then this number here is their official NCAA website, wins above bubble. The rest of them are the Torvik wins above bubbles, which it's mostly pretty much the same number. And then this number down here is what their pre-conference tournament wins above bubble number would be if they win the number of games that we put here. On that note, let's go to Seton Hall. Right now, they are 0.67 below bubble. I think pretty much everyone in the world has them pretty comfortably out. But even if they don't beat Connecticut or St. John's, wins above bubble would still be slightly above zero. That doesn't mean they would be in, but they would still be sort of on the board, even if they don't get those wins. Obviously, a win at Butler would be kind of nice. A win at Xavier looks fine on the resume. What do you think? Do they need to go 6-1? And even if that, like if they were to beat St. John's at home but lose the UConn game, where does that put them in your estimation?
I think they're probably in if they win at least one game in the Big East tournament at that point. I think the math actually is kind of relatively simple for St. John's. I think if they lose 3 games, it's basically over. If they lose 2 games, I think they're right on the bubble. And I think if they lose 1 or 0, they're probably in really good shape headed into the Big East tournament. So if you're looking for like a more simple math problem, that's probably about it for Seton Hall.
Yeah. I think they probably I think they have to beat UConn. I think they'd be better off beating UConn and losing to St. John's than the other way around because I think they need that marquee win because all they really have now is that neutral win over NC State. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not looking at their full resume right now, but it's not pretty. Where are they at? They are 53rd in the net. They are outside the top 50, but inside the top 60 in every single metric. So need that bolster. They don't have that quad 1A win. So I think a win at UConn maybe gets in there, but I don't think they're that interesting. The more interesting teams here are the mid majors. We'll start with St. Mary's and Santa Clara, both of whom it says have a pretty good chance of getting in. St. Mary's, we both have. I don't know where you have them right now. I think I have them at 40 overall. They're right there on that 9-10 seed kind of cut line. Actually, I guess 40 is more of a 10-11 seed cut line, but if neither of these teams beats Gonzaga, right? If the Zags win out and the Zags win the conference tournament, do you think there is a path for both of them to get in?
Not both. I think one of them could get in at that point. I just don't see both. And to your point about Seton Hall needing a marquee win, they're just I could see the committee saying, well, one of them was better than the other and letting them in for that reason, but I can't see them letting both of them in without marquee wins to go. So yeah, I think it's we're looking at WCC that is likely going to be two bids. The question is, to me, is it probably Santa Clara and Gonzaga, or is it probably St. Mary's and Gonzaga? But I think we're most likely looking at two bids.
So right now, these two teams are a combined 1-6 against Quad One. That only win was Santa Clara beating St. Mary's at home, which is just barely a Quad One because St. Mary's is 28 in the net. Santa Clara has that terrible, terrible home loss to Loyola Chicago. Um, I I think if Santa Clara wins the regular season game to get that sweep, and then if St. Mary's wins, I assume they would be 2-3 they would be meeting in the semifinals of the WCC. I think if St. Mary's wins that one and then loses to Gonzaga, maybe that's the path for all three to get in. It is worth noting on the WCC in particular, that tournament is over by the time the committee even starts talking. So those data points are always in there. We often say that the conference tournament data doesn't matter all that much, but for these teams, for the Missouri Valley as well, they're always an early one. I think it does matter. One of our questions was from Maddie Bracketology and Hawks 2023 DC also had questions about Santa Clara, mostly pertaining to how much do those terrible losses impact their 20 chances? Like, do you think it's more likely if they were to split, whichever direction it goes, so then Santa Clara would be 2-1 against St. Mary's? Do you think it's more likely that the Gales would get in or that the Broncos would get in?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think if they split in the regular season and Santa Clara wins the tournament game, I still tend to think St. Mary's is a little bit more likely, depending on what they do over here, right? So if St. Mary's wins every game except for Gonzaga in the regular season, and then Santa Clara wins the season series 2-1, I think St. Mary's is more likely to get in than Santa Clara, assuming Santa Clara obviously didn't beat Gonzaga in that scenario.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I think St. Mary's is more likely to get in because of the bad losses for Santa Clara.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at that point, if St. Mary's wins the regular season game, if it goes this way, if they both lose to Gonzaga and St. Mary's wins that game in a couple of weeks, St. Mary's is almost two full wins ahead of Santa Clara and wins above bubble. So I don't think that one head-to-head matchup in the WCC would flip it, but I think that is probably the path that Santa Clara could get in. Um, let's go to another team who we'll see what happens in the conference tournament in Miami, Ohio, right here. As I said earlier, Tournicast says they have a 3.7% chance. What do you think it is at this point, if you had to just put a number on it?
I'm thinking it's closer to 50-50. So the idea
Yeah,
that 3.7% is just
yeah,
blowing my mind.
yeah. I mean, if they metric wise, right, if they lose any single one of these games, they drop to about a 1.72. Even if they were to lose to Akron in the MAC championship, I think they'd end up losing a little bit more wob in the MAC tournament because they're not going to pick up much with the wins that they get before that championship game. They'll probably end up somewhere in like the 1.4 range at that point. And every team up there last year got in, but just the complete lack of any wins worth mentioning is going to be weird. But the fact that they would then be a 32-2 team, like they're both either it's going to be the worst quality of wins team to ever get in, or it's going to be by far the most wins to ever get left out. Like either way, Miami, Ohio would be making history. Our boy Tony Schneider asked, with Miami, Ohio, how hard is it going to be for the committee to just get past the shock of looking at their team sheet and seeing nothing on the left of it? And I responded to him on Twitter like, yeah, if it gets down to it and they're comparing Miami, Ohio to TCU or Missouri, who both not only played, by that point they'll probably have played 8 or 9 quad 1A games, but already have two really, really, really strong wins. I think they're going to lean in favor of the big boys as they always tend to do. What do you think about that with just the complete lack of a quad one column for the Red Hawks?
I think that WOB score is going to be pretty crucial because if it's as nice as I think it could be, like what we're looking at now, probably not going to get it done if they lose in the MAC tournament. You add a win over Eastern Michigan right there,
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm thinking they're getting in. And I don't think they need to go play Akron in the MAC championship. I think they're just in at that point because that WOB is going to be so strong that I just really don't see the committee. Think about who added that. They didn't have to add WOB. They chose to add WOB as a specific NCAA metric and not even, they didn't take Torvik's WOB or add somebody else's. They decided to do their own internal WOB metric that they wanted to add to the net on their own team sheets and in their own nitty gritty. So with that in mind, if you have a strong, like, what is that going to be? Like over two, most likely when they get to the MAC tournament, even if they take a loss, like how do you leave that team out from that standpoint? The whole reason you brought in WOB is to compare teams who are playing disparate schedules. So I think Miami, if they can get to the MAC tournament without a loss, I think they're very likely in, even if they don't have a real quality win at any point in the season.
So, subsequent question, I mean, I agree with you. If Miami finishes 31 and 0, they could lose in the first round of the MAC tournament and then they're going to get in. I think that would just be too ridiculous to ignore. But if that does happen, if they are basically forced to give Miami, Ohio a spot in the field because of their own new metric that they love, are they going to change how they calculate it in the offseason? Because they've done nothing to prove they belong in the field other than just not lose. I think this is like it's a 1 in a million type of team, but it's also a mess that the committee probably doesn't want to deal with again.
Well, let me ask you a question, Kerry.
All
That
right.
team that we've got on this page here, Boise State, do they have any bad losses?
Yes, they do.
What about that team, Santa Clara? Is there
Sure do.
some value in just winning every single game? Because sometimes you lose to the quad four team. And if you win them all the time consistently, it's worth something.
All right. Let's go to the two, well, I guess the three Mountain West teams. I don't know why I separated them by VCU. I highlighted Boise State here just so I would remind myself that I sent Dave Warlock a DM on Twitter, NCAA media coordinator, tournament guru, and he said that the NCAA's wins above bubble does not factor in that loss to Hawaii Pacific. So they are at a minus 0.39. It might as well be a minus 1.39. The committee, if Boise State is even worth talking about come the week of Selection Sunday, the committee's going to be constantly talking about, well, we have to dock them for that, right? We have to remember that that's not in the metrics. But in Torvik swab, that is included. So I found that interesting that it factors in that minus one for Torvik. Without it, Torvik would have them at a perfectly zero. They'd be right on the bubble, which feels about right. If the season started on November 4th, Boise State's almost in the conversation here. But even if they win every remaining game except for that game at Utah State, they would be at a 0.82. And again, that does not factor in the Hawaii Pacific game. So they're still effectively slightly below bubble at that point. I think they need to win out to have any pulse. Agreed?
Totally agree.
All right. And yet they have an 18.7% chance. So makes sense of that one. The other two Mountain West teams, New Mexico and San Diego State, who are both right on the bubble right now. I've seen a lot of people have San Diego State in. I checked the matrix before this, and they're actually above the cut line, and that has not yet even factored in, right? Oklahoma State's loss last night. So at this point, San Diego State's probably like 2 spots in for the the consensus. I'm a little surprised by that. I still have San Diego State like fourth out or something like that. But they have a positive wins above bubble right now, not by much, but it's positive. Uh, if they go 5-2 down the stretch, they'd be at a 1.33 down there, and that's generally speaking. I mean, from the 1 year of data that we've seen it, that should be enough. And I think based on that remaining schedule, it probably would be. Um, who was it that asked? I guess that was the Maddie bracketology question. He said, San Diego State has 6 games in a row against Q1, Q2 competition. Where do you see them if they only drop one? So if they finish 6-1, I guess we'll give them a win over Boise State there. They'd be 2.33 wins above bubble. I think they'd probably be right in that 8-9 seed range. I think if they go 5-2, they're in the we'll see how many bid thieves there are. Maybe you're in Dayton, maybe you're sweating profusely type of range.
I don't see the 8-9 game there, to be honest with you. I think this
Really?
is we've seen San Diego State and Utah State, New Mexico and Nevada, and I mean, name your Mountain West team in recent years who's had very good non-conference wins. They still haven't been seeded all that well.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what the Mountain West did not have this year. So I think San Diego State's in comfortably as like a 10 seed in that scenario. I do not see the win. Really, like what is the big win there? Like maybe Utah State at home? Like I actually really don't see it from an old school resume standpoint. So I think would they be in the tournament? Yeah, I think they're comfortably in the tournament at that point. I don't think they're getting a good seed though.
Yeah, I mean they are right now 4-5 against quads 1 and 2. So if they win 5 of those 6, it would be 9-6 against quads 1 and 2. I mean, yeah, I think yeah they'd be in. You might be right. It's probably more like a 10 seed. I didn't go through the Torvik team cast to forecast it out, but I was just kind of going off my gut. But if they go 5-2, let's say they lose the Utah State game and the New Mexico game, which obviously would help New Mexico get in. Maybe that ends up being a play out game. I don't know, but gun to your head at the moment, if they go 5-2 and those are their 2 losses, do you think they would be in, or is that just a serious let's see how many bid thieves there are situation?
I think it's a let's see what happens in the Mountain West Conference tournament scenario. Because I think with that wob, they're right in the picture. Really comes down to if they can make the final. I think if they make the final, they're probably in. If they don't make the final, they're probably out.
Okay, I won't disagree with you. Yeah, I think they're right on the bubble. I think they are probably ahead of New Mexico at this point. Certainly in terms of wins above bubble, they are, and I think in terms of really likelihood of taking advantage of what's coming their way the rest of the way. Because New Mexico, even if they go 4-3 here, they would have a negative wins above bubble, and they have 3 really tough road games remaining. Even if they win one of the games against Nevada or Grand Canyon, they're still right there. Oh, they are right at Mountaineers, baby, 0.79 from last year, and that's not including an eventual loss in the Mountain West tournament. So I think New Mexico's kind of got their backs up against the wall, and I'd be a little surprised at this point if they get in. I think that home loss to Boise State may have been the beginning of the end for them. But where do you have New Mexico? I think I still have them as like my third or fourth team out.
Yeah, I actually don't know exactly where I'd have them because I don't think they're like right there for me. I do
Mhm.
think they're out, and I don't think they're immediately out at this point. That said, good opportunity at Grand Canyon. If you're going to lose your home game to Boise State, it's actually good to have a road game like Grand Canyon to maybe increase your chances of actually getting in. Like it's a tough game, yeah, but that will do some serious work for your WAP if you actually do pick up that victory. So I don't know. I think New Mexico still has a fairly manageable path to the tournament. They're just going to have to do some road work.
Yeah, I mean they've got at Grand Canyon, at Nevada, at Utah State. They're going to be an underdog in all 3 of those in theory, and a home game against San Diego State. I think their odds of getting 3 of those 4, I think, are pretty slim, and that's probably what they need to do while also avoiding, a loss to Colorado State or Fresno along the way. Let's close out with VCU here. The Tournicast says 7.6%. They are slightly above bubble right now. I think VCU has gotten very interesting. I feel like I wonder how much it'll factor in that the committee is going to be constantly talking about the fact that so many of these teams, like, boy, they got that win over VCU though. Like, does that just make them feel like VCU is a better resume than they actually are? Because we're going to be talking about the Rams a lot, in regards to, who else did they lose to? Utah State. I guess we won't really care about the Vanderbilt game, but that's probably St. Louis, one of their best wins. NC State. I guess George Mason's kind of out of the conversation now, but I, do you think do they have to win out? Because Wob wise, no, they'd be more than one win above bubble, even with a loss at St. Louis. But it feels kind of like they have to get that, and they have to avoid picking up a bad loss along the way.
I don't know that they have to win out. I think they need to win at St. Louis. That's my viewpoint on it. Without the marquee win, I don't see it. But if they pick up that road win, I mean, how valuable is that? That's not just a Q1A win. We're talking about a win, maybe potentially only the second loss St. Louis will take all year.
Yeah.
If that's the case, that could really catch some attention. And I think we've talked about it for really since the beginning of the pod this year. VCU is better than they look on paper, right? Like they're a pretty good basketball team if that enters the equation. And I think it might when you have a WOB in the area that VCU would have. I think VCU might get the benefit of the doubt for that reason alone. We just think they're a pretty good team.
Now, we'll point out here the thing that really, I mean, I knew it before, but I didn't really see it on paper before that if they were to beat St. Louis and lose at Dayton, it's the same exact wob, but it feels so much better if they take that path. I agree with you. I feel like if they go 6-1, it depends on whether the loss is at St. Louis because they need to get that marquee win, even though it doesn't, it looks the same as far as wins above bubble is concerned. That's just will all week blow my mind. Any more thoughts on any of these 8 teams? Do you have anything you want to say on Butler or Creighton for any particular reason?
I'm just seeing that list over there. I'm pretty confident Georgetown isn't making the field, so I'm just going to throw that out. But no,
Oh,
I think the teams that we've discussed all have really decent shots, except for Boise State. I don't want to say any of them have particularly good chances, but the path, like you look at the games in front of them, it can happen. It's not we're not asking for crazy results here in order to get into the field. Like it might just be literally one upset for any of these teams. So really think that it will be interesting to see what happens with all these teams because they really are in this thing.
all right. And as we've done the previous two, we got to play the over-under game, but this one will be tricky because there's 8 of them. 3.5 of these 8 teams get in over-under.
It's interesting because I'm looking at Miami. I'm like, well, do they count as do they get the at large? Do they get the, but like, if I'm looking at it from that standpoint, I think I probably go under 3.5 getting in.
Yeah, I think it's 3. I think it'll be one of these. It'll either be New Mexico or San Diego State. I don't think either of them get in, but I would be, even though we've talked a lot about the Mountain West, but possibly being a one bid league, I find it hard to believe it actually will be. Uh, One of these West Coast Conference teams is going to get in, unless they just absolutely, take a terrible loss along the way, which is possible. And I think Miami, Ohio gets in, whether it's the auto bid or possibly as an at large. But yeah, I think it's probably 3 as well, which is a bummer. I wish there were more mid majors to put in the mix. We only have these 3 here as really locks, so we could end up with just 6 mid majors. I mean, obviously there will still be the 12 seeds and such, but uh for a 3 bid Big East and only a few mid majors, what are we doing here, guys? All right, that'll wrap us up for today. I'm sure there's plenty of marquee games tonight, but I haven't even looked at the schedule. But until then, take care and enjoy the hoops.